Hey CGs, Pastor Mike here. Hope you're doing well. This past Sunday in our history series, we had a chance to look at Jesus' first calling of the disciples. We found this story in Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. And the story starts out with Jesus preparing to preach to a large crowd of people. And he's got so many people in front of him that he decides to jump into a boat and let the boat out a little bit so he can preach to the masses around him. Now, the boat he happens to borrow belongs to Peter, who will soon become a disciple of Jesus. So after he's done teaching the crowd, it seems that the boat gets pulled back in, and Jesus tells Peter, hey, take the boat back out a little deeper and drop the nets and see what you find. Pastor Nick gave you 4 points, and in those 4 points is where I want to give you the questions for this week's study. So first of all, in point number 1, giving Jesus access, Jesus picked Peter and picked Peter's boat. Why did he pick Peter's boat? Because he'd already picked Peter to be a disciple. Friends, it is such an honor to be called by God to be one of his followers. Let me ask you this question. Have you answered his call? If no, why don't you explain why not? Point number 2, Pastor Nick said that we have to admit that we've come up empty. One thing I love about our faith in Christ is that with Jesus, our failures in this life are never final. But what we do need to realize is that everything in this world has to offer is only temporary. Admitting we can't do it on our own or have come up empty more than once is not a bad thing at all. So where have you come up empty in your life? And how has Jesus filled that gap for you? Third point that Pastor Nick gave this past Sunday is act on what Jesus tells you to do. Jesus gives instructions and commands, and they're never given to us without a reason. God would never ask us to do anything or to obey him in any certain way for no reason. You may have encountered times in your life when following God just didn't seem to make sense. It made no sense to Peter, by the way, to take the boat back out in broad daylight and and try to fish. Peter knew as an experienced fisherman that oftentimes the fish would come near shore at night because it was dark. And that's where they would feed, and that's where they were most likely to get caught. But fishing in broad daylight, dropping the nets, just didn't make any sense into him. But Peter decided to listen to Jesus, and he was blessed for it. God often asks us to do things that don't seem to make any sense. But the thing we need to remember is that what's unseen to our eyes is in very clear vision to his own. What happened when you decided to trust Jesus and obey? What also happened when you didn't? How many blessings have you missed out on because of your lack of trust in God? Finally, point 4, we need to accept what Jesus has done for us. Accepting what God has done for us can be hard for a couple of reasons. First of all, we feel like we're not worthy. I think this was Peter's case. I think that when Peter realized who he was standing in front of, he quickly looked at himself and saw the man he was, which was a man that he knew was in sin. And then he looked at Jesus and saw what obviously appeared to be perfection, or definitely a better man than him. So it would be easy for Peter to shy away from Jesus because he doesn't feel like he's worthy to be around him. Second, sometimes we feel that we need to earn what God offers or somehow be able to pay for it. Isn't it something that God never asks us for anything but our trust and our faith? There isn't anything that we can do in any situation to pay God back. And I think one of the reasons why we try to go this way is because we're trying to have some control over the situation. When we contribute somehow, that seems to give us some kind of control. But neither of these ways will work with Jesus. So what's holding you back from accepting all that God has to offer you? Do you think you can pick and choose which of his blessings or even his commands that you want to follow? I hope you got a lot out of this lesson this week. I know that I did. Hope these questions are somewhat challenging. And I hope you can see the beauty in this story of how God called these men while they were at work. Keep in mind that God called a lot of men while they were at work. He called Moses, he called Gideon, he called David, he called Paul, he called men right in the middle of their activities to follow him. Don't be surprised if he does that to you. God bless.